Hello, and we are live from the Big Phil Palace in Aurora, Ontario, Canada. I am your host for the UFC 273 post-show, Phil Chertok, the Big Phil combo in the flesh, joined, not as always, but on a special occasion, and tonight is definitely a special occasion. We have the man from Sudbury himself, the one, the only, Eric Marcotte. Eric, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. John definitely earned a break from all this madness after this past week, and judging by the length of this card, I think he chose the right night off.
That's right. Yes, John definitely picked the right night to take off after all the excitement of WrestleMania week, all the amazing action and coverage that the post team was able to provide. So yeah, I guess he's taking a day off, but he's still working always, of course. But
You can go on his Twitter and see that he was watching the card as it was happening, posting his scores. So
as a fan,
there's never truly a night off.
That's right. Yes. But as a fan. But yes. Of course, we're very happy to have you as always, Eric, because your insight is second to none. We're a little bit late here. A lot of action to cover. 2 title fights. So why don't we start with the main event? Alex Volkanovski taking on the Korean Zombie Jung. Originally, before we get to that, maybe I'll just do a recap. This event happened from the VyStar Memorial Arena in Jacksonville, Florida, which has been the home to several pandemic events. On the call was John Anik, Joe Rogan, and Paul Felder. And before we actually get into the main event, Eric, there were some new broadcast graphics, on-screen graphics for the fights, and also some pre-fight graphics. Any thoughts on those items?
Honestly, not really. It's like barely a change. It's very small things, If you're not watching the UFC all the time, I don't even know if you've noticed, but no big changes. I like after the first fight, I stopped noticing. Really. How about you?
Yeah, I would say they were a mild improvement. The fighter graphics were a little bit odd. There was a new intro video, but as you mentioned, they're very small adjustments. The UFC has got a formula. They stick to that formula. So deviating from that, it's very minor deviations. But nonetheless, it's always nice to see a little bit of variety on the broadcast. Getting back to the main event, the featherweight battle between Alex Volkanovski and Jung, the Korean Zombie, originally scheduled to be the third fight between Max Holloway and Volkanovski. Holloway was not well, had to step out of the fight. They put in the Zombie instead. And what was your anticipation level for this fight, Eric?
I thought it had the potential to be an exciting fight. This largely depending on how Volkanovski would approach it, but it was nice to see a fresh matchup as well. I was looking forward to Holloway Volkanovski 3 as much as anybody, but at the same time, it feels like there's so many rematches for the titles as of late. I was excited to see a relatively fresh name in there as well. Obviously, not as big of a fight, but I wasn't upset about it.
Yeah, I think I echoed those sentiments on the news show on Friday when John asked me about it. Yeah, I mean, ideally Holloway in there for a third fight. I could watch that again and again and again, but I thought that the Korean Zombie was a good substitute in this scenario. And while it didn't turn out to be the most competitive fight, it was certainly a very excellent performance. So why don't you run down the action, Eric?
So the fighters touch gloves about 3 times, which is in stark contrast to our other title fight we'll get to later to begin the fight, right? And Volkanovski, just immediately, you can tell there is a huge speed difference between Alexander Volkanovski and the Korean Zombie. Zombie eats some big shots in this opening round, and he's looking for his opportunities to counter, but you can see the damage is adding up quickly, and Volkanovski wobbles him with an early 1-2. He's throwing leg kick after leg kick. They're adding up quickly as well, and he mixes in his wrestling, takes Zombie down. If there's a positive to take away for the Korean Zombie, is his grappling is always great. He popped back up very quickly from all of Volkanovski's takedowns, but towards the end of the round, Volkanovski kind of knocks him off balance with a left hand, sweeps him to the ground again with another leg kick. This was just a beautiful round for Alexander Volkanovski, and just by the end of this first round, you can tell this is going to be a one-sided fight. We go to round two. They trade leg kicks early, and Zombie lands a hard jab. He is a powerful, like he has power in his hands, despite the fact that he wasn't landing with a ton of frequency. But a left hook from Volkanovski had to catch a Zombie on his way in and just knocks his head back, cuts off his attack completely. Volkanovski's super active. He's like not taking any time off in this bout. He lands this left hand that looks as though it had Zombie practically out on his feet. But despite this, Zombie throws a hook that kind of that tells Volkanovski, "Okay, don't get carried away, don't get reckless." Uh, this was another really dominant round for Alexander Volkanovski, and that kept up in round three. So I actually thought for about 4 minutes this was the best round the Korean Zombie had. He was looking Volkanovski was winning, don't get me wrong, but he was landing with more frequency and he was not taking as much damage. But in the final seconds of the round, Volkanovski lands this right hand that just floors Zombie, and he goes down with the ground pound to finish the fight. He doesn't get it on time, but Zombie's a bloody mess. The doctor's brought in to check on him between rounds. It's determined that he can continue, but he is looking very off by this point, and it's like maybe the first shot that Volkanovski lands in the fourth round, a big right hand that stumbles Zombie. Herb Dean immediately steps in, stops the fight, and Alexander Volkanovski is your winner by TKO at 45 seconds of round four to retain the UFC Featherweight Championship. An excellent, excellent performance from Alexander Volkanovski, but a fairly uncompetitive fight.
Yes, as you mentioned, in the third round, it kind of maybe started to look like Zombie was getting some momentum early in the round, landing with more frequency, but the power difference was too much. And not just the power difference, just the variety, the way that Volkanovski was able to mix it up everywhere, get takedowns, even when Zombie did defend the takedowns and get back, he was happy to go right back at it, disengage, throw elbows, throw knees, just do everything. You know, a complete mixed martial arts performance. Joe Rogan used the term seminar. I think that's as appropriate as it gets. Just a showcase performance. Disappointing for the Korean Zombie for sure. You know, he's a very exciting, fan-friendly fighter. So it's always tough to see somebody like that lose in such dominating fashion. But Alex Volkanovski putting a stamp on his championship reign and making a claim for that number one pound for pound spot, I believe.
Yeah, he has a great case. I would say, in my opinion, the top two pound for pound fighters are probably Kamaru Usman and then Alexander Volkanovski, but he's certainly gaining ground. With the Korean Zombie, I think it's been evident throughout his last, I don't know, maybe two or three fights that he is slowing down. You could see it in his movement. You can see his durability starting to fade, which was, of course, what made him famous in the first place. But you see he's getting a bit chinnier with age. Still extraordinarily tough. Like, still one of the toughest guys you'll get in there, as seen by this performance against Volkanovski. But finally slowing down after years of these wild fights.
Yeah, and in the post-fight interview, there was sort of like allusions to that he's at least going to be considering retirement. It's something he does after every loss, but losing a title fight is a little bit tougher to deal with. But no commitment, of course. But we shall see.
He's not retiring. Come on, well, no one retires.
That's right. No one retires, especially in the Bottleseum. Now, so we don't know what's next for the Zombie. We think we know what's next for Volkanovski. The logical choice is that third fight with Holloway. But, the broadcasters were suggesting, maybe he wants a fresh face. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if they went in the direction of Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez or Volkanovski versus Arnold Allen, sure, those are exciting fights. But it does feel as though, just in terms of star power and name value, Max Holloway is the name that the promotion would want to go with. I'd be surprised if they went in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. And I've made no secret about the fact that I could watch that fight all day, all night. So, I'm all for it. Hopefully they make it happen soon. And it sounds like Volkanovski's down for that. He wants to be active. He keeps saying he wants to fight many times, which makes sense. You're the champ. Time to get paid. This is your moment. A lot of champs, they kind of take a break when they become the champ, and you can understand that, but this is your time on top. So you probably want to get paid. All right. So moving down to the next fight, we had another title fight, this time for the Bantamweight Championship, the rematch, the unification between the interim Bantamweight title and the actual Bantamweight title, which of course belonged to Aljamain Sterling, who won it via disqualification over Petr Yan about a year ago. Petr Yan defeated Corey Sandhagen for the interim title in the fall, and here they are to clean up all that bad blood.
Let me just say publicly on air right now, I want to commend you for calling Sterling's championship the actual championship as opposed to calling it the undisputed championship, which the UFC loves to do even when there is an interim champion. So good on you, Phil. Good on you.
Is the championship now? Is it undisputed? Because
it is now undisputed.
I don't think so. I think there's still quite a dispute, as we'll get to.
We'll get to that. Yeah. Shall we jump into it?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
So, yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, this is the rematch. Sterling and Yan fought last year at UFC 259, and a fight that Petr Yan was the then bantamweight champion. Petr Yan was starting to pull away, and right before he illegally kneed Aljamain Sterling in the head, thus was disqualified, and Sterling won the title. So here we go. Unlike the Korean Zombie and Alexander Volkanovski, no friendliness here. These guys are not touching gloves. Yan defends Sterling's first takedown attempt, and the majority of the round was spent with Sterling circling the cage while Yan pressured forward. Sterling landed numerous kicks, largely to the midsection of Yan, while Yan tried to chase him down with these heavy left hands. He caught Sterling with a couple near the end of the round. For me, that was enough to give him the round, but a very competitive one that we'll talk more about after we get to the scorecards. All right. So round 2 starts, and Sterling catches a leg from Yan early in the round, and he trips him to the ground and just immediately takes Petr Yan's back. He locks in a body triangle, and Yan is largely unable to move, really. He just spends the round trying to defend submissions. And this was a fantastic round from Aljamain Sterling, who lands some good ground and pound even from Jan's back, forcing him to make defensive mistakes and giving up positions. He didn't secure any of the submissions he was looking for, but I mean, given that this was the 6th round that these two have officially fought, this was his best one to this point. Round 3, very similar. Yan defends a number of takedowns to start, but eventually he makes a mistake. Sterling takes him down, and then immediately takes his back yet again, locks in that body triangle, and the round looks, it's a mirror image to round 2. Maybe perhaps not as much damage done, but once again, it's in terms of control time, it's all Aljamain Sterling, a very clear round for him. So he's certainly up on the scorecards going into round 4. However, this is when the momentum of the fight shifts, not unlike it did in the first fight. Yan flurries forward with much more aggression to begin round 4. And while Sterling is still attempting takedown after takedown, Yan is shrugging pretty much all of them off at this point. At one point, there was a scramble that resulted in Sterling nearly taking the back of Yan again, but this time Yan slips out, and he just goes to work from the guard of Sterling. He lands some strong ground and pound, and this was a clear round for Petr Yan. We go into the 5th and final round, and I thought Yan seemed to be the fresher fighter, but Sterling was looking way better in this 5th round than he even was by the 3rd round of their prior bouts. So I think that's important to note. Yan kept defending all these takedown attempts from Sterling. It is worthy knowing that he wasn't doing much offensively in the early portions of this round just because he was spending so much time defending. But as the round wore on, Yan started to do more and more, especially when he was fine. Like Sterling would shoot for a takedown, Yan would defend, sprawl, and move to his back, land some right hands, left hands. He never really came close to securing a submission himself, but This was a pretty strong round for Petr Yan. The fight does go the distance, and they gave each other a friendly pat on the shoulder, which is as much friendship as I think you'll ever see between these two. We go to the scorecards. It takes them a while to come up, so it's going to be a split decision, and that's exactly what we get. Scorecards of 48-47, 48-47, and then one dissenting 47-48. Aljamain Sterling is your winner. He retains the UFC Bantamweight Championship. He unifies it with the interim champion, and he proved a lot of doubters wrong. Now, I will say, I'll start off. I scored this fight 48-47 for Petr Yan. Now, I'm in the minority on that one, as I saw online. But I think with rounds 2 through 5 being very decisive, 2 in favor of Sterling and 2 in favor of Yan, it ultimately comes down to that very first round on everybody's scorecard, unless we're arguing for a draw. And while Sterling may have landed a bit more, I thought Yan was more damaging and thus awarded him the round. How about you, Phil?
So I have the exact same score for round 1. I just felt that the damage from the punches Yan landed was greater than that of Sterling, and he was the aggressor and pushed the action. And it wasn't until the end of the round where he landed some really solid ones. The one place where I do have a different score, though, is on round 2. I did give this one 10-8 to Sterling, which I think none of the judges gave it 10-8, so it's a bit of a moot point. But exactly like you said, it was the 2 and 3 were mirror images, except 2 had damage. He almost flattened him out. He punched him quite a bit, and it was a lot of control. So I gave that round as 10-8, and then the rest of the fight was predictable, easy to score. So I actually had this one a draw. Now, let's forget that. So first of all, it's not a bad picking Sterling to win this fight is not a bad call. The first round was very close. There was no robbery. He clearly won 2 rounds. But I think where people are going to have difficulty with this result is, first of all, under the old school pride rules, it's pretty clear who would be the victor here. And if people aren't familiar, under old pride rules, they didn't judge it round by round. They judged the whole fight they judged the fight as a whole, not the whole fight as a whole. That's weird. So they would judge the whole fight. And what often would happen is whoever's taking that momentum for the last portion of the fight ends up winning the fight, because you sort of extrapolate that. What's it going to look like in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, further? So under those old pride rules, I mean, really, Aljo managed to win this fight with 7 minutes of back control. And Petr Yan did a lot of damage in this fight. It was actually very similar to the first fight, except Sterling got the takedowns and it was the difference. He got 2 takedowns, and that was the difference. And so I just think it's a tough sell for people. I don't want to take away anything from Aljamain because he won within the rules that we have. But if you're asking me who the best 135 pounder in the world is, I'm still going to go with Petr Yan.
Well, the next guy in line to prove himself perhaps the best bantamweight in the world seems to be TJ Dillashaw, because that's who Aljamain Sterling called out in his post-fight interview, who was conveniently set up outside the octagon with all the cameras on him. So I imagine it will be Sterling versus Dillashaw for the title next.
Yeah.
A fight that I think TJ Dillashaw will probably be favored in.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, he's an excellent wrestler and a tremendous striker. He's got cardio for days, assisted or not. And so I mean, personally, I would like to see another, a third fight. Let's really finish it. But I can understand in this case, the UFC doesn't want. It wasn't the most exciting of fights. It was okay. It had its moments, and Yan isn't like the most notable of names. So I definitely think the UFC is going to jump to that TJ Dillashaw fight as well. But Yan's next title shot is not far away.
No, not at all, and I don't think it even matters whether Sterling, defends against Dillashaw or Dillashaw becomes the champion. I could see him jumping right back in there, perhaps after one more fight, we'll see, but, bantamweight is stacked. There are no shortage of directions you can go in that division.
Absolutely. All right, so now moving down the card, it was not a title fight, but it had all the buzz of a title fight as Khamzat Chimaev was taking on former title contender Gilbert Burns. Khamzat, with all the hype in the world, coming off of his big win in the fall over Li Jingliang. I mean, people are already crowning him a champion, but no doubt this was his biggest test to date. So how do you do, Eric?
So Chimaev comes in, and let me tell you, this guy got a superstar reaction from this crowd. If you look at the pre-fight media numbers and whatnot, Chimaev received the most attention of any fighter on this card. And as he walked to the cage, yeah, he got that superstar ovation. The fight begins, and Chimaev applies pressure, backspurt into the cage, where he starts to hunt for a takedown. Chimaev is successful in dragging him down initially, but Burns, extremely skilled jujitsu player, right? And he basically rolls, and he rolls Chimaev into the Burns's guard. It was very impressive, and Chimaev just immediately stands up. He doesn't really have any interest in that. At this point, the broadcast mentions that Burns has landed two significant strikes, which is a new record for a UFC opponent against Khamzat Chimaev. He's going to land a lot more. They start trading looping hooks in the pocket with initially it seems like Chimaev is landing the harder shots. Burns isn't reacting as well, but he catches Chimaev with this heavy jab followed by a left hook and starts pressuring forward. They are fighting wildly. I cannot begin to recap every exchange of this entire fight, but it is absurd, the power and output from both of these fighters just trading hooks in the pocket. In the final minute of the round, a jab from Chimaev drops Burns, and he follows him to the ground with some heavy ground and pound. Burns does recover, and Chimaev lets him back to his feet, but Burns was a bloody mess by the end of this round. I saw it for Chimaev. I think you have to score it for him based on the knockdown, but a very entertaining round. It's just gonna get crazier. We go into round two, and Burns is looking for takedowns of his own, but Chimaev's takedown defense is. Uh, I can see this guy going through his entire career without ever being taken down. That's how good his takedown defense looked here. Uh, Chimaev is working his jab, but he gets cracked by this heavy straight right hand from Burns, and they're just trading right hands still. And Chimaev's defending takedowns. A left hand from Burns hurts Chimaev, and he goes on attack in pursuit of a finish. But Chimaev starts firing back, and he's able to relieve the pressure by landing shots of his own. Just completely wild exchanges. Both fighters are bloody messes and beginning to tire from the insane pace of this fight. Uh, the ending of the round takes the cake, though, because as Chimaev goes forward and connects with this brutal uppercut, Burns fires the cleanest, most powerful right hand that catches Chimaev clean, and I swear this would have knocked out 99% of the Earth's population. And while Chimaev goes down, he is not knocked out, and he actually records a takedown before the round ends. Absolutely unbelievable round. I saw this one for Gilbert Burns, and in all likelihood, 1919 going into round three. Chimaev continues to defend takedown attempts from Burns, and he kind of begins to tee off on him against the cage. Burns is looking very tired, but still throwing back with power. Chimaev is really pulling ahead throughout the first 3 minutes of this round, but I guess Burns was saving it all for the end because in the final 90 seconds or so, he starts marching forward with right hand after right hand, and they are landing clean. Chimaev is just eating them all. He has it in him to fire back, but this turned into another competitive wild round. We go to the scorecards, a common theme on this card. Comes up, Chimaev wins by unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three scorecards. I saw it the same way. Incredible fight. What did you think? How did you score it, Phil?
Yeah, I scored it the same way. Chimaev got the first, Burns the second, and then Khamzat again the third. I mean, we haven't looked at the bonuses yet, but this is definitely the fight of the night. I can't miss. Chamaya comes in, we were talking about, him making a star-making performance. Well, this was that, but just in a totally different way than, this was the opposite of what happened in the Li Jingliang fight, where he just dominated from the get-go. It kind of looked like it might go that way early because he almost got that takedown. He had Gilbert's arm sort of trapped behind his back, but Gilbert got up and, went on to put on an incredible back and forth fight. Chimaev showed incredible takedown defense. He was switching stances. His leg kicks looked good. His jab looked amazing. Like both of his straights, like off of both hands, looked really good. It was just really the skill and toughness of Burns that made this a competitive fight. So now is the obvious question: is what's next? How fast do we shoot this Hamzat rocket ship, Eric?
I think it's probably going to come down to the result of Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. If Edwards does get the win, I think they'll give Kamaru Usman an immediate rematch, just considering all he's accomplished. But if Usman does get the win, I could very well see his next opponent being Khamzat Chimaev.
Really, just going straight to that, eh?
I just beat the second best welterweight in the world, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. I feel like you want to do at least one 5-round main event with him. The problem is just the opponent, and the only person out.
Covington.
Yeah, that is the only opponent there. It makes the perfect sense. I'd want to see it, but as we know, Colby Covington is a valuable commodity to the UFC, and maybe that's not how they want to utilize him.
Especially if Chimaev were to beat Kamaru Usman, and that's perhaps a title fight that they'd want to sell on pay-per-view at a later date. Perhaps they wouldn't want to give it away at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, Gilbert Burns, tough loss, very strong performance, even in defeat. Kind of tough to see, what the next steps for him in the division are. It's a pretty loaded division. But there's a queue for that title shot, and he's already had one shot. Now he's dropped down further down the ladder. So what do you see next for him?
Well, coming into this fight, he had the win against Stephen Thompson, and honestly, even though I didn't see it this way, it wouldn't be absurd if you scored this fight for Gilbert Burns, especially for that late comeback in the third round. So it's clear that he's still one of the top fighters in this division. You know what? If you're not doing Colby versus Chimaev, why not do Gilbert Burns versus Colby Covington?
Well, it's sort of the same reasons.
Same answer. I mean,
yeah, it's like, yeah, but he definitely deserves to stay with the top guys in the division. That's for sure.
Well, with Colby Covington, it's like if you're not going to fight any of the top fighters in the division, what are you doing, right?
With Colby?
Yeah.
Well, it's Poirier maybe, or it's one of these. It's look, I'm not in favor of it, but we know that the UFC will entertain the money fight ahead of the competitive fight if it serves their interest.
That's true. Yeah.
But I'm not, I'm sort of overemphasizing that too because, Kobe's a notable person, but he's not like a mega draw. So I could see that fight happening more likely than not, actually. So, but I just wouldn't be surprised if they go another direction.
No,
All right. So next up, we had a important women's strawweight match between Mackenzie Dern and Tasha Torres. Dern coming off of that loss to was it Marina Rodriguez was the last one? Yeah.
And Torres on a bit of a winning streak going into this one.
Yeah, sort of turning things around a little bit.
Yeah, she was facing off against some like tough competition. I'm not pulling up her Wikipedia page. It's too late for that shit. But it was like Joanna and Zhang Weili and like the best of the best that she was.
That's right. To. Yeah, and she was still competitive in those efforts.
Yeah, she never gets blown out of the water. She makes all of her fights competitive and is basically impossible to finish, as we will get to. The fight starts and Torres shrugs off Dern's early takedown attempts. She's kind of ducking under Dern's punches. She's doing this thing where she kind of jumps in with this right hand and then gets out of there before Dern has time to recover. I don't know how much damage they were doing, but she was landing them over and over again. Uh, she seemed to be landing more throughout the round, but in the final minute, Dern lands these trio of heavy right hands, and it was the best sequence of the fight for her to that point. I saw this round for Tisha Torres. Many others did not. We'll get to that later. We go to round 2, and Dern, okay, so she basically tries to pull guard by jumping into Torres and pulling her down, and Torres initially defends that, but Dern, if anyone is unaware, Mackenzie Dern is very, very, very skilled at jujitsu, and what she proceeds to do is absolutely incredible. While Torres has her held out in front of her, Dern tr- basically climbs over her shoulder with this Kimura attempt in a standing position, and she was very close to finishing this. Torres was able to use the cage to prevent her from turking the arm too much, but she's clearly in pain, and she's carrying Dern's weight for an extended period of time. Eventually, they go to the ground, and Torres is able to roll out of it, but this was a very dangerous sequence for her. And in the final seconds of the round, Dern starts to roll for a leg. They both, I think they both go for knee bars at one point, but not as close, but nonetheless a very good round for Mackenzie Dern, who had Tisha Torres in danger throughout the near entirety of this round. We go into round 3, and Torres attempts this heel kick, which results in Dern taking her to the ground momentarily. But this time, Torres pushes her off and lands this up kick that seems to, even though it lands to the chest, it seems to stun Dern slightly. And Torres lands this uppercut as Dern's trying to pick herself back up. The momentum is shifting in her favor, and she's going on the attack a lot more throughout this round. I thought while Dern was still landing with power, perhaps even more power than Torres was landing with, I thought this was a very solid round to end the fight with for Tisha Torres. I scored the fight 29-28 in her favor, as did one of the judges, but the two other judges saw 29-28 for Mackenzie Dern. How did you see it, Phil?
So I scored it for Torres as well. I gave her the first and the third. I'm kind of shocked that you're telling me that some people gave Dern the first. Like the third was in dispute for sure. But I mean, Dern was kind of wild. That right hand only landed a couple times, and Tisha was just very consistent throughout the round. So it was a little bit surprising. But Dern definitely dominated with the grappling in the second round, and you know, the third round was close enough that it didn't really bother me that they gave it to Dern.
No, I wasn't bothered either. It was a close fight.
Yeah, so, you know, another win for Mackenzie Dern. This, you know, she's somebody that the UFC is high on. They put her in a big spot last time. She wasn't able to get the W over Marina Rodriguez, but I'm sure they're going to put her in another premier spot. I mean, this was a very high profile event, and she got featured, so I wouldn't be surprised to see her headline another fight night.
No, not at all. I think they'll probably go with Dern against Yan Xiaonan next, considering that's an available opponent ranked higher than her. I do wonder what Mackenzie Dern's ceiling is in the division. She has a lot of clear faults I think will prevent her from ever being too competitive with your Joanna and Jaceks and your Zhang Wei Lees of the world, but she's incredibly dangerous regardless.
Yeah, I generally agree, but I do also find she's been making significant improvements every fight. So you know, who knows what 2 to 3 years could look like for her. She's definitely somebody who the UFC is going to continue to be interested in pushing up the ladder, and just based on her jiu-jitsu, she's going to be able to beat a lot of top 10 women. Just because she's that elite of elite level.
I mean, she'd probably have even more success if she made the move to flyweight. She fought there previously, but I feel like the division it's pretty weak compared to strawweight, which is I feel like there is a ceiling for her in that division, and the ceiling at flyweight is just Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of seems crazy that she's at strawweight now because, you know, she had such difficulty making the weight before, but she looks very healthy and she looks very proper and fit. So I agree the competition is going to be easier at flyweight, but I think this is the right division for him. All right. So before we get to the opener, the UFC also announced that Cub Swanson versus Do Ho Choi is going to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame under the Fight Wing. This was a fight that I was in attendance for, an incredible card, UFC 206, was it? In
Yes.
Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It was in December. It was an amazing fight, just back and forth action. What's your recollections of this fight, Eric?
I mean, in my opinion, it's the greatest 3-round fight of all time. If you've never seen Cub Swanson versus Do Ho Choi, do yourself a favor, get Fight Pass, load up UFC 206, and watch this fight because it is absolutely incredible for 15 minutes. Like ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. This fight was.
Do yourself a favor.
Fucking 2 a.m. pulling mass out.
Yeah. So well deserved for those two competitors. And there'll be some type of ceremony during International Fight Week in a couple months. All right, so opening up the card, we have the undefeated former Olympian Mark O'Madsen taking on Vince Pichel. I was shocked to learn that Vince is he only has like 9 fights in the UFC, or like 9 or 11. What is he, 9-2, 7-2? But he's been in the UFC for 10 years.
Yeah, he's been around forever.
He's older than Mark Madsen. I was like, Mark Madsen looks like Mark Madsen, this is the last run for him. He's 37, but Vince is 39. He looks great though. No hate on Vince.
Yeah, he looks good, but perhaps not being the most active fighter has kept him young. Maybe. All right, so this fight began like 17 hours ago. Madsen begins the fight with a bunch of leg kicks, and Pichel is having trouble closing the distance early, so Madsen has a lot of success with just throwing those leg kicks over and over again. At one point, Pichel cracks Madsen with a right hand, and he starts laughing. He's like, "You better watch out, motherfucker!" And I'm like, okay. Madsen responds with a heavy right hand of his own, and he picks up the activity slightly in the final minutes of the round. He changes levels, takes Pichel down. To Pichel's credit, pops right back up, but Madsen lands a big looping right hand before time expires. I thought this was a pretty clear round for Madsen. Fight continues in round 2. Madsen was the more active fighter, and he would mix in the occasional takedown to bring the fight, to his comfort zone, but he was never able to keep Pichel down for any period of time. And at one point, he even goes for a calf slicer, unsuccessfully, that is. In the final seconds of the fight, Pichel really tags him a few times on the feet and actually secures a takedown of his own against the Olympic silver medalist, the first person to do it against Marco Madsen in the UFC. So a strong ending to the round, 19-19 on the scorecards. We go into round 3, and Pichel, he's acting like he's already won. He's telling, Madsen's finished, and he turns up the aggression in round 3. And he shoots for another takedown. He wants to take Madsen down again, but Madsen is not falling for the same trick twice. He defends it, secures one of his own, and smothers him from top position for the entirety of the round. Mark Madsen wins by unanimous decision. The scorecards of 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28. Do you have any memories of this fight, Phil?
I do remember watching it. I thought Marco Madsen had a very good post-fight speech. Look, I enjoy watching him. Like he's a smart fighter. He's a winner. He's a gamer. But from a style standpoint, it's not the most exciting. Especially that third round. He pretty much just laid on top of him for the whole round, which was the right move to do to get the W. But he's out there, he's on a pay-per-view, he's trying to get a title shot, and it's not going to happen with performances like these, right? So like you're not even going to get a fight night main event with performances like these. And it's not to say that it was a poor performance, it's just not getting the fans excited, right? So he's a nice guy, he's a winner, but that doesn't sell tickets.
Like, it wouldn't shock me if they maybe gave him a ranked opponent at some point, but it's not going to be a main event. It's not going to be a big name, and I mean, he's been inconsistent. Sometimes he's went out there and looked pretty good. Other times he's looked not so good. He's got his hand raised regardless.
Yep.
Uh, the ranked competition at lightweight is very, very, very tough. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what his future holds at 37 years of age.
Yeah, but I think this is the time. I think you put him now in there with somebody in the top 15 and it's sink or swim. And maybe he can, land some punches at some point.
Let's not get crazy.
All right, so I'll just quickly go through some of the highlights on the preliminary card. We saw
wasn't Conor McGregor on these prelims?
What?
Conor McGregor.
I is that what they're calling this guy? Is that what there's? Oh,
that
God.
is what they're calling him.
Oh, God. I mean, okay. Well, anyway, I guess they're talking about Ian Gary, who had an impressive win over Darian Weeks. It was a wild line. He was like a 7 or 8-1 favorite. I didn't like that. Darian Weeks, he just didn't get anything off in this fight. He was pretty sound defensively, but no offense. Ian Gary looked sharp, kept range, won a unanimous decision. But, I mean, I don't know. I didn't see a ton to get too excited about. But it seems like the fans are pretty excited about him, and certainly the UFC is high on him.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad performance from Gary. He did what he had to do to win. He showed some good takedown defense, but not a very entertaining fight. And I don't think there's that much you can take away from it, especially for Darian Weeks.
Also on the preliminary card, you had Anthony Hernandez defeating Josh Fremd. How do you pronounce it? Fremd? Josh Fremd. You had Raquel Pennington defeating Aspen Ladd. And you had the debut of Mike Malott defeating Mickey Gall by TKO, one-punch knockout late in the first round. Impressive debut from the Canadian Mike Malott, who at the end of the fight announced by the interview that he will be donating his entire show money, sum of $10,000, to cancer fighting cause because a friend of his child has cancer, and so he made that announcement. Good guy promo from Canadian Mike Malott. Somebody I'm hoping to see a lot more of.
Oh my God.
All right. And what happened on the early prelims, Eric?
Alexei Oleinik defeats Jared Vanderaa by a neck crank or a scarf hold at 3 minutes and 39 seconds of the first round. Vanderaa made the insane mistake of grappling with Alexei Oleinik in the first round. Just not a smart decision. Earlier in the card, we had Pierre Rodriguez defeat Kay Hansen by unanimous decision, 29-28 all. That was too long ago. I don't remember it. And in the first fight of the night, we had Julio Arce and Daniel Gustavo Santos. Pretty dominant victory for Arce against the guy making his UFC debut. He was just a step ahead for the 15 minutes, and that was UFC 273.
Yes, UFC 273 in the books. Why don't you go get the performance bonuses, and I'll take a look ahead to what's to come. So next week, we've got another UFC fight night. This one is Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad 2. This is a rematch from their fight from UFC 205 that Luque won by knockout. Other than that, this is maybe one of the thinnest name cards I can recall.
Name a matchup. Come on, let's get people excited.
I mean, I like every match has at least one person that I have not heard of. Okay, wait. William Knight versus Devin Clark. Is that actually on? Is that actually happening? I'm not even sure.
I hope it's not.
Oh, Chris Barnett's on the card. Okay, there's something. There's something to look forward to. Anyway, very thin card next week from the Apex. 8:30 p.m. start time, so that's at least something to look forward to. And the next time that the post show returns with John back will be for UFC 274, 2 title fights as Charles Oliveira takes on Justin Gaethje, a very highly anticipated fight. And Rose Namajunas defends against Carla Esparza. You also have Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson on that card. Shogun versus Ovin St. Preux.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, I can't get any sadder than that, right? That has to be the saddest fight on the card.
Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon.
Oh, no.
Macy Chazon versus Norma Dumont. There's some bangers on here. Anyway, that's very exciting. It's a super exciting main event, and Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson is a very good fight as well. Chandler has just been must-see TV since joining the UFC. And that event will be taking place from the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's on May 7th. So about a month away. You got those bonuses, Eric?
We do. So unsurprisingly, fight of the night is Khamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns, and your performance of the night bonuses go out to Alexander Volkanovski and Alexei Oleinik.
All right. Yes. Oh, Alexei Oleinik got I guess, not a big night of finishes. There was only, 3 finishes on the card?
Yeah, so poor Canadian Mallard got screwed with his $10,000 to show. He Volkanovski needed that $50K more,
Yes. Now, we do have, before we take off, we do have one super chat from Jake Nader 722. He's asking, is Malott the new hero Canadian MMA yearns for?
No.
No? So who is, Eric?
No one can ever replace Georges St. Pierre, but my heart belongs to Canadian Charles Jourdain.
Charles Jourdain. Okay. Well, I mean, out of all of the current Canadian prospects, he probably seems like the best bet. I mean, not that we saw a ton out of him.
He just beat Mickey Gall. I mean, I think we need a bit more.
Who else is there? Eric? Who else is there?
We have Charles Jourdain and Ayman Zahabi.
Ayman Zahabi, that's right. Yes. Olivier Aubin Mercier. We're naming some different. We're naming different organizations. Come on. Okay. All right. Tanner Boser. There you go. That is the top Canadian in the UFC currently.
Did Felicia Spencer retire, or is she still fighting?
she's a broadcaster for Eagle FC. Wasn't she on the Eagle FC card? Brock Lesnar, of course. If Brock Lesnar comes out of retirement, comes back, he's the all-time GOAT Canadian.
A true Canadian, Brock Lesnar is, yes.
Okay, all right. We're meandering. We're tired. Yeah. We need to sleep. You need Elden Ring or something like that.
Yeah,
thank you to everybody who's joined us in the Discord, on YouTube. Thanks to everybody who pays attention to post. John and Wei will be back. Actually, Wei won't be back. He's on vacation this week, isn't he? Yeah, so John will be back.
At some point, he'll be back.
Well, maybe.
I mean, we hope. Do you know something the rest of us don't?
Are you going to try to slide into that Monday night slot? Are you doing the... No?
On Monday night, it will be John Pollock and Nate Milton, I believe, reviewing Raw. So
okay,
must listen to podcasting.
That's right. All right. Okay, well, thanks as always, Eric. It was a lot of fun. I look forward to doing it with you again. Maybe not next month. Maybe next month. Who knows? We'll see.
Maybe down the road. Something that doesn't have us up at 2:30 in the morning, just trying to string sentences together coherently. Thank you for everything you do, Phil.
My pleasure. All right. Take care, everybody. It was fun. We'll see you next time.